and he's also visiting professor at IIIT Delhi. So he would be traveling all the time. So really we are fortunate to have you, sir, in our midst this afternoon. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to take part in this mini conference where we conduct a series of series of talks today as well as tomorrow. Anantaram sir is well-known scientist, research professor, and he has had so many publications all around the world. He's a top scientist as well. So thank you, sir, for connecting today and deliver your talk. Now it's over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to give a talk at a conference with other students and faculty around. Can you I'll share my screen, and please let me know if you can hear me and see my screen. So can you see my screen and can you hear me?
Yes sir, yes sir, we are able to see your screen and we are able to hear you also.
Is it clear enough?
Yes, yes sir, it is clear.
Okay, so we are thank you, Professor Kannan, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk to you all about trustworthy AI. I am sure most of you have heard about trustworthy AI. So this will be an overview of some of the areas of trustworthy AI. And we'll quickly look at why it is important, what is the need for what is meant by trustworthy AI, and what are the important approaches and algorithms, and why should we look at this area now? So AI systems have been around for almost 50 years now. Okay, since 1959, when the first commercial computer was made, the idea was to build a system. I mean, there has been efforts to build a system which could interact almost like a human being. You've heard of the Turing test, and in a sense, AI has been around for a long time. But and in that context, trustworthiness of AI systems have always been around. But now it has become more prominent and cognizable because AI systems now are directly affecting human beings. Initially, AI systems were used for game playing, scheduling, planning, and trying to make systems which would help in decision making for organizations. But now, AI systems have started affecting people directly. You all are doing a lot on social media and also online shopping. So there is recommendation systems. There is when you use certain document search, there's a lot of AI which goes into it. Okay, and there are prediction systems. So all this are sort of influencing our lives. There are health prediction systems, and there are many, in almost every field of human life, whether it's healthcare, whether it is the supply chain management, whether it is scheduling, okay, whether it's planning, materials planning, whatever it is, has got affected by AI technologies. And doctors are using it, chemical engineers are using it, space scientists are using it, okay, and even news rooms are using AI. So, and we are consumers of it. Initially, once upon a time, it was only organizations which are consumers. Humans were interacting with organizations. But now, AI has the potential to influence every aspect of human life. And so, trustworthiness in AI systems has become a very important area. And all those who are interested in AI systems and working in AI systems have to look at trustworthiness in AI systems. I thought it will be good to discuss this in this 45 minutes kind of talk. So, some years back, they were using AI in deciding whom to give parole in US. Okay, and this AI system was being used. Then somebody did a study of that AI system and found that it was biased. Okay, so they called it machine bias. And these are the people who published a paper in 2016 saying that the AI system which is being used to decide. So when somebody goes to jail after some years because of good behavior, they let him out for some time. I forgot what it's called in India, parole or whatever it is. So they come out for some time and then they go back into the jail, etc., etc. And also, the system was sort of found that it was biased against the blacks. So they published a paper on this. They said that given to, can you see my screen? I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Can
sir.
somebody confirm?
We can see your screen, sir.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir. We can see your screen.
Okay. Okay. So given to people who were convicted, Vernon Prater and Bisha Gordon, they were convicted for petty thefts, and this person was categorized as low risk category. That low risk of this person re-offending again or committing another crime, whereas this lady was marked at higher risk. So she was not given the parole, whereas he was given the parole or early release. He was given early release, assuming that that they had the same kind of good behavior, and they found that this system was consistently predicting against the blacks. So he was rated, she was rated at a high risk. Similarly, between these two people, they were arrested for drug possession arrest. He was categorized as a low risk because he was white, and as he was categorized at a high risk of 10 because he was a black. And this person was not given early release, whereas this person was given early release. And in fact, this person re-offended. Whereas when this person was released, he never re-offended again. This person was caught a couple of times with cocaine and other things. So they found that a guy who had molested a small child every day for a year could still come out with low risk because he had a job. Whereas a drunk guy will look at a high risk because he was homeless. He didn't have a homeless. So the AI system was looking at other parameters like homelessness and job and all that. And this person who had actually molested a child was categorized as low risk than a person who had never, who may have been drunk, but he was homeless, so he was categorized as a high risk. So this was done through an AI system. So what they did was they fed in data, and data, can be biased because it depends on how you collect the data. Data always carries some human biases in it. And if you do machine learning, blind machine learning, then the AI system can come out and throw up what the biases inherently are there in the human data collection. So this is what was found, that labeled higher risk but didn't re-offend only 23% of the whites, whereas the African Americans were 44%, the black Americans were 44% didn't re-offend at all, but they were labeled at a higher risk. Similarly, the whites re-offended more than the blacks and did re-offend. So this was one of the things which was published, and everyone went into a huge worry about AI systems directly affecting human lives. Then similarly, Facebook, this is the second example. Facebook shut down AI after it invented its own language. You might have heard of it. Facebook released two chatbots. Let's call it chatbot A and chatbot B. This was in 2017. Okay. Now, when a chatbot interacts with a human being, okay, a human being will interact in long grammatical sentences. Okay, and the chatbot has to respond back to the human being in sensible ways, in such a way that the human being can understand. But when a chatbot was interacting with another chatbot, it realized that it can sort of ignore grammar. Okay, so even if it ignores grammar or it makes grammatical mistakes, the other chatbot was only doing, you can say, key words, key concepts, and all that. It really didn't bother about grammar, whereas humans can understand only if it is properly grammatically phrased. So what happened was when chatbot 1 was interacting with chatbot 2, it realized that it could come out with sentences which are not totally grammatically correct, and in the process it started sort of inventing its own language, and Facebook engineers could not understand that language when they kept a log of the language between two chatbots. So then they said that, my God, at this rate, what will happen is that chatbots may go out of control. So they actually shut down the chatbot after it invented its own language. Invented means here sort of, created a version of the language where it was not grammatically correct for humans to understand. You have heard of Microsoft Stay, right? I hope you have heard of Microsoft Stay. This was in 2016. Microsoft had created a chatbot called Tay, okay, and they released it to the world without testing it enough. Now, what they thought was, they tried their best, of course. What happened was they released a chatbot which will look at tweets. Okay, so you tweet to it, it will respond back with a tweet. So what happened was when they released it to the world, okay, they didn't expect that people will start abusing the chatbot. So people started tweeting to the chatbot abuses. So it found lots of people are tweeting with abuses. So Microsoft Tay started abusing people left, right, and center. Okay, because that it thought, you see, it doesn't understand language, right? I mean, no AI system really understands language as humans do. So it was going only by the most popular set of words and tweets and all that. Now, popular set of tweets, the words in a tweet, and it was an AI algorithm which was just taking the most commonly used words, and then what happened was the Microsoft Tay started abusing people left, right, and center using absolutely racist words and some obscene words and all that, and it caused a huge problem for Microsoft, and they had to shut it down within 24 hours of it, less than 24 hours of it being released, because it would give a Microsoft, and ever since 2016, they have never released the Tay chatbot. If you have ever heard of it, let me know. But none of them, I mean, they have not released. Neither Facebook released the chatbot, and neither or Microsoft released that AI chatbot. Okay, why? Because it's a very tough thing. So that's the third example. Okay, so let's just watch a video, and just a sec. Give me a sec. I will have to share this video, and just give me a second. Okay, so I need to share sound. Can you see my screen with
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can see your screen, sir.
And can you hear the sound from the video?
Yes, sir. To an extent.
Okay.
Yes.
So we all know who this person is, right?
And we want this to work globally, so we are opening AI centers around the world. AI is going to impact many, many fields. I want to give you a couple of examples today. Healthcare is one of the most important fields AI is going to transform. Last year, we announced a work on diabetic retinopathy. It's the leading cause of blindness.
Okay, so listen to this video very carefully. Sundar Pichai is giving his yarn, as they call it, and we'll discuss this a little later. Okay, so this is one of the use cases which I use in discussing trustworthy AI. So just listen to it very carefully.
And we use deep learning to help doctors diagnose it earlier. And we've been running field trials since then at Aravind and Sankara hospitals in India, and the field trials are going really well. We are bringing expert diagnosis to places where trained doctors are scarce. It turned out, using the same retinal scans, there were things which humans quite didn't know to look for, but our AI systems offered more insights. your same eye scan turns out holds information with which we can predict the 5-year risk of you having an adverse cardiovascular event, heart attack or strokes. So to me the interesting thing is that...
Did you hear that? So he said 5-year risk of a person having heart attack or stroke. I'll just replay that. And that's one of the questions which I asked about trustworthy AI.
So to me the interesting thing is that more than what doctors could find in these eye scans, the machine learning systems offered newer insights. This could be the basis for a new non-invasive way to detect cardiovascular risk. And we just published the research, and we are going to be working to bring this to field trials with our partners. Another area where AI can help is to actually help doctors predict medical events. Turns out doctors have a lot of difficult decisions to make, and for them, getting advance notice, say 24 to 48 hours before a patient is likely to get very sick, has a tremendous difference in the outcome. And so we put our machine learning systems to work. We've been working with our partners using de-identified medical records. And it turns out if you go and analyze over 100,000 data points per patient, more than any single doctor could analyze, we can actually quantitatively predict the chance of readmission, 24 to 40.
Yeah, so again, this is another point which is very important. So let me just play this a little once again.
Admission, 24 to 48 hours before, earlier than traditional methods. It gives doctors more time to act. We are publishing our paper on...
Yeah, so first of all, I have nothing against Google, but I'll be scared to go to Shankar Netralaya at Chennai. It is at 76% accuracy. That means there is a 24% error. And 24 to 48 hours before I get a heart attack, he can, Google, Sundar Pichai can predict, Google can predict that I'm going to have a heart attack. Let's say that I'm in the 24%. And just hearing, if somebody opens this door and says that, oh, you're going to have a heart attack in the next 24 to 48 hours, just hearing that news, I'll have an heart attack. Okay, so one of my students told me, well, then Google was right. Yeah, of course it was right. If I have an heart attack. But the question is, with this kind of error, how trustworthy is this Sundar Pichai system in Shankar Netralaya? And he's saying very proudly that it can predict cardiovascular diseases. And somebody else can use this AI system, for example, a pathology lab, can use this AI system to send me alerts, okay, and keep sending me for all kinds of medical tests, misuse this. So the question is, these kind of systems are affecting me directly as a patient. Okay, it's got a 76% accuracy, 24% error, and it can cause havoc in this kind of scenario. So the question of accuracy, of trustworthiness, becomes very important. Let's just go back to the presentation. I have nothing against Google, so let me just say that, but it's important that we think about trustworthiness, because a lot of issues come into this, and people can use this kind of things in such a way that it can be misused. So what is trust? Just going from definition of dictionary, if you take the noun, verbs and adjectives, trust is nothing but reliance on integrity, strength, ability, confidence of expectation of something. To rely upon, verb is to rely upon or place confidence in someone or something. So that's the dictionary definition. And there is the EU's ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI, which says that any AI, if it is trustworthy, has to be lawful, it should be ethical, it should be robust. And each of these three components is necessary but not sufficient to achieve trustworthy AI. Okay? So AI concerns not only trustworthiness, but also comprises of trustworthiness of all processes and systems underneath it. So for example, if you have this automated car, right? And you've heard of Google's automated car, which actually misread a white truck on a white background, and went and crashed into it, and one person died, I think, in that process. Okay? So how well is that person who has actually built the system, evaluated the system for trustworthiness, and released it to the people. Okay, because you and I are going to get affected. So Guy Mong Lee gave a very interesting kind of explanation of trust. Okay, and I use that. Trust is basically faith, belief, confidence, and dependence, and looks at things like ability and capability, integrity and honesty, benevolence and cooperation. So under ability, it is stability, reliability, scalability, safety, robustness. Integrity is like accuracy, consistency, certainty. Then benevolence is like availability. You rely on an AI system and it's not available at that point of time. And let's say it's the most critical AI system. For example, let us just assume, just for discussion's sake, that we have an AI system, we are sitting in a room, let's say we go for a movie theater, and the AI system is going to guide people when there is a fire. Okay, it is going to tell people how to get out from that place. And if it is not available at the time when actually the fire occurs, then it cannot be trusted, right? So it's important that all these things, that it should be accurate, it should be correct, it should be consistent, it should be safe, it should be scalable, it should be reliable. So there are many aspects which come to it. And if you look at the trustworthiness, can you see my screen? Are you able to see my PPT?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We are with you. We are with you.
I keep asking this because
Yes, sir. We are with you. We are with you.
Okay, so there is a person who trusts. Okay, and there is another entity which needs to be trusted. And trust is the relationship between the truster and the trustee. And then there is the environment which introduces all these things like threats, risks, and all that. So what are the aspects? These are some of the aspects: explainability of AI system, transparency, interpretability, accountability, accuracy, safety, completeness, verification, validation, reliability, availability, robustness, fairness, bias, scope. Okay, so I've just given one-line description of each of this. So let's say we start with bias. Bias is nothing but systematic error in data or model. Okay, so the bias, human bias. Okay, so if you all heard of, all the systems nowadays are machine learning systems. Most of the systems, okay, nowadays people have realized that it has to be hybrid systems. It can't be just machine learning. Okay, and the data is capturing something, okay, some representation of the world, and that representation may not be properly sort of measured. So there might be some error in the data or model, in the data, or it can also be in the model and the way I create the model. Fairness is giving equal opportunities for all groups in the decision-making space, whether it's black or whites, or rich or poor, or living in the slum area or living in the high-rise building. Everyone should get equal opportunities. Okay. Robustness is ability to handle unforeseen changes. Availability is it should be available, should not choke up due to its data, as I explained to you about that fire AI, the fire evacuation system AI system. Reliability is, will it perform well for a given time period? If I have an AI system which is an automated driver assistant, okay, will it perform well for that? Let's say I go on a long drive, okay, will it perform well for different kinds of drivers, and maybe over 10 days drive in hot and cold weather, in all kinds of things? Will it perform well in snowy conditions, in rainy conditions, etc., etc. Verification, validation, how well does the AI system meets its specification and requirements? So there is something called requirements, there is something called specifications. Requirements is from the user side, specifications is from the designers and the engineers side. So how well does it meet? And how well does the model cover the decision space? If it doesn't cover the entire decision space, then it's not complete. Is it safe and secure? How accurate is it? How accountable is it? So if the AI system makes a mistake, who's accountable? Is it the human or the AI system? Or it's a hybrid of both of them? Okay, accountability. For example, in that Google car crash, who's accountable? Was it the designer or was it the AI system which could recognize between a truck and a white background, right? Okay, interpretability is results and explanations should be generated for you in a human understandable way. Explainability is generating explanations. There is a difference between explainability and interpretability, and traceability is to trace out why the AI ML model performed the way it did. So we'll just get into some parts of it and then have a quick brief overview about each of these areas. So bias is nothing but systematic error in the data or model that can possibly influence a decision in the decision making process. Okay, so there is some systematic error in the data or model, and some of the biases may influence the decision making. Okay, sometimes the bias may be inherent inside and may not really manifest to influence. Okay, there are almost 180 types of cognitive biases which we humans have. They have been identified and documented. And if you can look at this list of cognitive biases. So bias manifests when it plays a role to influence decisions that discriminate against a particular group, either intentionally or unintentionally. Intentionally can be done. Like suppose I want to build a system to distribute some benefits from the government. If I go and only do surveys in the metropolitan cities, or if I do surveys in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, and I don't cover towns and villages, then the system is going to be biased in terms of income, in terms of whether they have a job or not. Whereas in villages and towns of India, some poorer villages, they may not have all the people may not have jobs, or there may not be a hospital, there may not be educational facilities, there may not be a house or proper living place, etc., etc. So there is, if you really want to